on our end, we're Peter and Sasha. I do business development here at Near, so we talk to a lot of projects actually early on because of kind of the way our product roadmap worked out is that we focused a lot on gaming space, open web, as well as gaming. So we are in contact with a lot of gaming projects, and um, it's very kind of like exciting. Like I published a blog post, like very very long, unwieldy blog post about it. So like I'm very excited to talk to you today about it.
And I'm Peter. I'm heading up developer experience. So I think about how people can build stuff better and faster. And then I'm also personally interested because I have CheezeWizards and CryptoKitties in my Dapper wallet. So we can talk about that later.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Sasha and Peter, thanks for having me on this show or meeting. It's really exciting to finally hop on a call. We've been trying to arrange this for a few weeks now, or maybe a month, and it's finally happening. So really excited to be speaking to you guys and talking about what we're working on and what we did in the past. There's just so many amazing stories that we could discuss here.
Cool. So why don't you kick off by telling us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so my background, I went to business school. I was born in Calgary. It's a smaller city in Canada. And it's known for oil and gas. So a lot of my friends growing up got jobs working in, either up north in the oil rigs or in the large buildings downtown in Calgary relating to oil and gas and natural resources. So that's where I grew up. And then I moved to Vancouver in the last 3 years and joined Axiom Zen, which is the parent company of Dapper Labs. As I said, I went to business school and I studied a lot about psychology and entrepreneurship and marketing. And I actually dropped out of school in my third year and started working for a startup company that was in Calgary. They grew really, really fast. And within a year and a half's time, I took a break from a semester and I never really returned. And then I moved to Kamloops and I worked at another startup called Lightship Works. They built like a internet or industrial internet of things devices to help track workers in oil fields and mining and forestry. And so I had a very interesting kind of path of learning from startups and understanding more about marketing and product and growth hacking, and now I also spend quite a lot of time working with the designers. So it's kind of this whole range of things that I've discovered in the tech industry after I kind of took the leap and took a break from school and never really returned. So that's kind of been my background. And at Axiom Zen, which is the parent company, it started about 6.5 years ago from Roham and Sam. Roham was a VC. He went to Stanford and he was a VC in Silicon Valley. And the premise of Axiom Zen was to bring together really smart serial entrepreneurs or founder-like people together under one roof to build ventures together. One of the fundamental problems of Silicon Valley is typically you build a startup with your best friends or people that you went to school with, and you raise some money or you go to YC, and the attrition rate of these startups are really high, right? A lot of them just don't succeed, and these really strong bonds and friendships that people form just break purely because they've run out of money or it just didn't work out. And these people usually find jobs at Facebook or Google or Apple, and this we see very commonly, right? And so the point of Axiom Zen was to bring together all of these smart people who love working with each other and build ventures together. So in the last 6.5 years, Axiom Zen has been working with Fortune 500 companies to build products together in some form or fashion, forming joint ventures as well. And also the revenue that we made from working with these partners, we built our own startups internally. So we definitely don't come from like a Bitcoin, early Bitcoin millionaire, whatever, background. Our background has been building products in the enterprise and B2B space. We've actually spun up 2 successful companies. One's called ZenHub. It's a project management software, and it's a good alternative to Trello, Jira, Asana. Their largest client is IBM. There's about 40,000 licenses there, and same with NASA, Jet Propulsion Lab, and Microsoft.
Oh yeah, we use ZenHub as well.
Oh, you do? Yeah, ZenHouse. Yeah, it's a great product. The team's actually in the same office as us, and they're doing great. They're about 30-ish employees, and they're growing really fast. The second company that we spun out is called Routific. They built a routing API for food delivery and fleet service companies, and they were also part of Techstars New York. So they spun out, and they're growing really fast and focusing mainly on the B2B side. And when I joined about 3 years ago, I worked on a few other projects in the company. I worked on a virtual reality streaming platform called Bash. I worked on a fencing project briefly. I worked on ZenHub for a bit. I also worked on a few games that the company was working on at that time. There was also a dating app that we worked on, and a pseudo anonymous chat app that was really interesting because people at work started to test it and share a lot of secrets within the company, and that was a really fun experiment. I spent most of my time at Axiom Zen, since I've been here for 3 years, on a specific product, about a year and a half, on this product called Toby, Toby, as part of the Y Combinator startup school. And essentially, it's a Chrome extension for productivity. It helps you manage all your browser tabs when you have it all kind of packed into your Chrome. And so we worked on that, me and Arthur, for about a year and a half, and grew it to about 250,000 users. And we ran some pilots with Twitter from New Relic and Bazaar Voice and a few other larger companies. But as I was explaining, the one difficult part of building startup companies is kind of crossing the chasm and making sure the business model matches with the product, right? And with Toby, we spent a considerable amount of time trying to find a business model where the 5 or 10 year projection could reach a potential of 100 million ARR. That's kind of the aim for Axiom Zen when we build ventures together. And so we just really couldn't wrap our heads around some of the math there. We did the pilots, and we kind of tried to cross the chasm. And I think that Toby would have been a great $1 to $5 million ARR business, which, for a 2-man team would have been amazing. But for us, our eye is on a bigger prize. And so me and Arthur joined the CryptoKitties team, which was very, very small at that time. There was about 4 other engineers plus a designer. And then the 2 of us joined in a total of 7. And we built the alpha version of CryptoKitties. We launched it at ETH Waterloo. And then the rest, I think, everyone knows the story of CryptoKitties. And kind of present day now, we've spun out a separate company from Axiom Zen called Dapper Labs. And Dapper Labs owns CryptoKitties and Dapper, as you mentioned, and CheezeWizards, and also doing a ton of R&D and other stuff within the company. And so that's kind of how the structure is. It's Axiom Zen, Dapper Labs, ZenHub, Routific, and a ton of other projects that we've built in the past as well. Hopefully that gives you an overview of us as a company and our background and where we come from.
And when you were so small, like at 7 people, what were the things that were important for you to focus, for you and Arthur, to kind of complement the team that was mostly like technical and designer?
Yeah, so at that time, Dieter, our CTO, and Fabiano were working on the ERC 721 contract, which are the token standard. And me and Arthur, we work really well together in understanding and being obsessed by the user. I still remember that there's this one story where I had just joined CryptoKitties and I was still learning a lot about blockchain. This is maybe spring 2017. And so I knew about Bitcoin. I didn't know much about the technology blockchain, and I was listening to like 2 podcasts a day, Laurel Shin and a ton of other ones, and trying to catch up to speed. And I remember I went to Fabiano and I was like, hey, can you show me how to breed these cats together? And he's like, yeah, no problem. And then he sent me a website, right, my Ether wallet. And then he sent me on Slack the ABI for the smart contract for CryptoKitty. And then he's like, yo, paste that in there. And then I'm going to send you some Rinkeby ETH. And I was like, well, I don't know what the hell this is. And then he said, call this function. And I called the function. And then we waited a bit and we looked at Etherscan and then it completed, right? And I looked at Fabian, I was like, hey, so can I see the cat? And he's like, not really, but it's there in your wallet. And that's the one thing that me and Arthur looked at and we were like, no way, like we cannot go to ETH Waterloo at the hackathon and ask developers to do this. Like this is if we're building a game, it has to have a visual interface. So about 2 weeks before the hackathon, we scrambled to build a website that had like a really crazy viral marketing campaign that I've kind of built, me and Arthur built. And then not only that, we built an alpha version where it was on Rinkeby and people could see their kitties and they could breed. And I think that is the type of thing that me and Arthur bring to the table, is being assessed by the user and seeing it from fresh pair of eyes of like, what would people think when they see this? And we do this all the time with CheezeWizards and with Dapper. We always assume the position of, I don't know anything about blockchain. How does this feel? And sometimes when we're building highly technical projects, like you guys are aware, you really get lost in the details. And when you zoom out, people, like normal people, are just like, what is this? This is so confusing, right? And so that's something that is really important to never lose sight of.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this viral loop that you created back then.
Yeah, so I like to do weird campaigns, as you could tell with the floating cheese in my background. What we did was have a 24-hour live stream of like a kitty shelter that was on basically running on the website, and people were watching these cats kind of sleep and eat and do whatever. And on the website, there were memes that would show up based on Easter eggs that people would unlock. So sometimes you have to click 50 times and then a meme would show up. Sometimes you have to wait 6 hours and a meme will show up. When the meme shows up, whether it's like a SpongeBob one or Doge, you click on it and it reveals a sentence that's encrypted. And so people had to kind of go through all of these Easter eggs and piece together all of the phrases and then kind of read what that phrase is and send us an email of the answer. And the people who did, we sent them like t-shirts, and some of them we actually worked together in designing a kitty together. So there's actually some fancy cats in CryptoKitties that are prizes based on the fact that they solved the puzzle early on. And also in CryptoKitties website, I don't know if you've seen, but if you open up the console, you will see we actually never removed it. We wrote the Catafesto in the console of CryptoKitties, and that was kind of like a last-minute addition from our end, from me and Arthur. We were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to write something in the console? And still to date, it's still there. And so that was written in like maybe summer of 2017, near the time that we were going to launch. So that was the campaign and crazy website. I also, at ETH Waterloo, I bought a bunch of Pokemon cards because the thing is, there's a lot of swag that's given out to people at conferences and hackathons, and it's like a piece of paper people throw away. They don't treasure it, right? So I was like, you know what? People won't throw away Pokemon cards because people have a relationship with them. So I bought them and I created these really simple, like, cats are coming to the blockchain with CryptoKitties.co website on it, and I stuck it on the back of the Pokemon cards. And at the hackathon, I just handed it out to all of the people and like, hey, go try the alpha version of CryptoKitties. And people like still today, people tell me like, hey, I still kept my Pokemon card that had CryptoKitties sticker on it. And to me, like, that was way cheaper than printing a bunch of cards. And not only that, people feel like they have an attachment to it. And so all of that together with the crazy website was part of the launch of CryptoKitties.
So when you're coming up with an idea like that, like something that's a little bit crazy, do you ever get pushback from other people? Or do you know, like, do you know if are there any ideas that you wanted to do that you ended up not doing?
Yeah, we always, me and Arthur always get pushed back. Right. I remember that when we built that, we kind of secretly over the weekend built that live streaming website, and then we showed the team, and they were just like, oh, it's off-brand. It's like so bright and it's neon. It doesn't match it. And I was like, you know what? Like, what are we doing? We're doing some crazy shit here. Like, we're making a digital. We're building the world's first blockchain game. We're calling it CryptoKitties, and like these cats are like weird, and there's genetics. Like, we must kind of embrace it, right, and be part of culture rather than like playing it safe and having like a very basic campaign that everyone does, right? So I think a lot of them were biting their nails, and they're like, okay, I mean, let's just see how it goes. And I think it went well. People started to see it, and a lot more traffic came, and so they're like, okay, I guess it kind of worked. So there's always like internal like fear of like people not receiving it well. Externally, I think that people, the only one of the common feedback that we got from this website was like, hey, can we donate crypto to help these cats in the shelter? And we actually added a address link where people sent money or sent ETH to, and then we sent it in US dollars to the shelter. So that was the one thing that people asked for, because they wanted to help the cats and they were watching the cats. But all in all, I mean, it was well received, because at that time it was like the ICO boom, right? And so every week everyone's ICOing. The websites look the same. It's always like those interconnected nets and shit like that, and like some crazy fancy words and shit on the website. But when they looked at ours, they're like, what the hell is going on? I still remember I was DMing press like Laura Shin and everybody on Twitter, and like, hey, cats are coming to the blockchain. And then they were just like, what are you talking about, man? Like, you're like, are you high or something? Or like, they just ignored me. They never took it seriously. The only person who actually wrote the first article for CryptoKitties was June from CoinDesk. At that time, he was at Quartz. But I had to, what happened was like CryptoKitties, the transaction volume started to climb more and more. A lot more people started to play it. And I kept sending him screenshots of the like every 5% increase of like the total transactions. And I think when it got to like 15% of the total Ethereum network, he was like, fine, I'll write about it. And he wrote the first article, and then TechCrunch wrote the next one, and then everything came after that. But yeah, there was a very interesting story with Casey Newton. He was a reporter from The Verge. I sent him like a cold email with the headline, "Caster comes to the blockchain." And the funny thing is, like, he screenshotted that subject line and he tweeted it, and he said, "I'm going back to bed." And I saw his tweet, and I was like, kind of like, man, this guy's missing out. And after we've been covered by like Vice and BBC and Vox, I tweeted back to him and was like, hey, what do you think? You think like cats did come to the blockchain? And he didn't respond, but I think that it would have been a great opportunity for him if he looked into it a little bit more. So these are really funny stories of the early days of CryptoKitties.
Right. That's super fun. Yeah, I'm always interested in, because if you look at anything that was successful in hindsight, it seems inevitable that it was going to succeed. But it's so interesting to hear about the uncertainty of even the marketing campaign. I find that really interesting.
Yeah, marketing campaigns are yeah, they're a beast, and you have to draw from a lot of sources. You can't be looking at people within the space, so to say, that much. Otherwise, you just do what they're doing. Internally, when I spend time thinking about like a launch strategy, I usually center it around like a rap album. So for CryptoKitties, the inspiration of this launch was the Wu-Tang Clan. And I kind of had a whole story about it in a slide deck to the team of like what we're going to do, what is the emotion that we want to invoke. And then with the CheezeWizard launch in during New York Blockchain Week this year, the focus of it was around NAS. And since we were going to New York, I felt like it was fitting. So that's kind of been my process of centering around rap album and getting really deep in that and correlating it to the craziness that we like to invoke into people.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about the CheezeWizards launch? What was that like?
Yeah, so New York Blockchain Week, I've got to admit, and I'll be honest, it was a it was the craziest thing that we've done as a team. Like we launched Dapper Wallet at that time. We launched CheezeWizards there, and I did another side project within Dapper Labs that was digital fashion. It was on this the world's first digital dress on the blockchain called Iridescence. We sold that at the Ethereal Summit for 9,500. It's close to 10,000. And so we launched three things at once. And at the same time, we attended all of the conferences and we spoke at all of the conferences and even the panels. And not only that, we did some strategic partnerships with other like Gitcoin and a few other projects at these conferences. And not only that, we organized our own meetup that had other partners involved. And to top that off, we sponsored ETH New York. So we were a sponsor and we were helping people with using the Dapper testnet and using it for the hackathon. So it was just the most intense period of my life, and I think the teams as well, a lot of running back and forth. The CheezeWizard hackathon, or sorry, the CheezeWizard launch, the campaign was it's a little bit more tamed than CryptoKitties, but one of the key points of it was adding cheese to our Twitter names, which you may still see with a lot of the Dapper Labs employees, but not only that, our investors and also influencers in the space. So we asked them all to put a cheese emoji in their Twitter name to kind of build up the like, why is there cheese here? Like, what is the connection? The CheezeWizard website was really cool, and it displayed like it was very interactive as you've seen. What we also did was another thing that I do is every time I travel to speak at a conference in a region, I design new swag or new merch for just the team members to wear. So I designed these very orange CheezeWizard jackets that the team wore, and it has I like to play on like street culture, so I'm sure maybe you guys know of Anti-Social Social Club. So in the back it's CheezeWizard Social Club. And so I like to kind of remix these things because people from afar, they'll see like, oh, Social Club, and it's like the same exact font, but then they see a new thing, which is CheezeWizard. So it's all about kind of incepting these ideas into people's vision. And in Beijing, when I went to Shanghai last year to speak at China Joy, I designed like a pink hoodie that's like blinding your eyes, and on the main stage, like it just really differentiates, right? Because everyone's wearing like a t-shirt and it says like whatever name of your company, but there's so much more creative things you could do in the clothing that you wear. And I think the people who really took it to the next level, and I was actually really impressed by it, was Spank Chain, a means team. At one of the conferences, the whole team shaved their head or whatever, and they dyed it pink. Or some of them shaved their head, but the girls just all dyed it bright pink. And I was like, wow, that is commitment. But that's kind of the craziness that we were in, right? So yeah, CheezeWizards, we did presentations, we did a lot of teasers. We actually we kind of revealed some of the pictures of the wizards in a very closed door setting, but we kind of expected it to be shared or leaked. And so that was kind of the strategy for it. And at that time now, like it's different from CryptoKitties where we started from zero, right? Now we're at a point where we have the CryptoKitties, the email base is like in the hundreds of thousands. So we have a baseline of distribution. And so we obviously will kind of build the campaign around that. And at the events, we spoke to it and wore the clothes and the cheese. So that was kind of the CheezeWizard launch.
That's cool. Pretty cool. And going forward, so like what's the priorities for you kind of going forward to the extent you can share?
So Dapper Labs has two big initiatives. The first initiative is forming a gaming studio. Right now, in total, Dapper Labs is about 110 team members, and we're 98% based in Vancouver. We have a few team members in New York and in Los Angeles, and some in Europe, but not too many. And we're really diverse as well. In total, I think we speak over like 22 languages, and we come from like 20 countries. So it's a lot of people who, the good thing about Canada is that immigration and having people come to and move to Canada and live here is much easier than in the States, as you guys know. There's a lot of challenges for tech employees in the US that makes them have to, I guess, move up to Vancouver or something like that. So 110 team members, so about like 50% or 60% is in the gaming studio, and we have some of the best game designers from like EVE Online, from Zynga, from Disney, from Glue Mobile. We also have the lead producer of FIFA, who's working on the NBA game. And so the gaming studio, the whole point of it is to build our own IP like CheezeWizards and CryptoKitties, but as you now are aware of, working on the NBA game for 2020, it's going to be a really big effort from us. And we're also in discussions with like Hollywood studios, music labels, gaming companies, esports teams, and celebrities. And we're going to continue to build consumer blockchain experiences on that side. The second side of the company is around technology, and that's where Dapper sits, and also our R&D team. The point of, I mean, our root is in building technology products, so that's kind of where we're most comfortable with. But since now we've kind of gotten used to doing two things at once. And on that side, we're working on Dapper, as you know, and improving that. Android, we're doing a lot of tests on the Android app, yeah, so we're streamlining that. And R&D, they've looked into, it's led by our CTO, and they've done tons of like, I don't know, a year's worth of like looking into other protocols and scaling and all these other things, because you need to kind of explore all those angles. So that's kind of how Dapper Labs is set up currently. I spend most of my time in the studio side. Sometimes I dip my toes into Dapper, and the R&D team, I barely dip my toe in there. Yeah.
And did you have to also expand your team? Because it seems like you guys like really grew, like since like you started with 7 people, now you're like over 100. What about yourself? Do you have like now a growth team as well, or?
Yeah, so well, 7 to 110, yes, we hired a lot, and not only that, we brought on a lot of engineers and designers from Axiom Zen to come on board to Dapper Labs. So that helped a lot because a lot of people already knew each other. It's not like completely new culture. And for the growth and marketing team, that has definitely expanded. We have now in total, let me see, about 10 in total. Before it was like maybe 2 or 3. So it has grown significantly. And we have like marketing managers who now, for me, I spent most of my time trying to solve the most critical problems for the company. And right now, CheezeWizards is getting ready for its the tournament that's coming. So I'm spending a lot of my time on CheezeWizards. But we have a marketing manager that's managing CryptoKitties, and then also Dapper, and then we have a marketing manager for NBA. So that's kind of how it's structured currently.
And I also had a question about composability because I remember when like CryptoKitties started, a bunch of people started like building other contracts on top of it, right? Kittyverse, Kitty Hats, things like that. And so then with Wizards, I know you're doing like Hackathon right now with IDO, so there's some like experimentation there. Do you see like a lot of engagement from developer community, like willing to kind of like build things on top, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, so just for clarification, the hackathon we're doing with CoinList, and IDEO is doing their own separate one.
Okay.
But it's just so that we both announced at the same time, and then it kind of people thought it was mixed in. But
Yeah.
IDEO is mostly focused on working with protocols, and then for us, it's specifically to CheezeWizards. So far, we have over like 300 or 330 registered developers, and there is more than 20 projects being worked on, as far as we're aware, and there's a lot of excitement. You know, one of the things when we built CryptoKitties, we realized like, hey, people like started to build tools on top of CryptoKitties or build gaming experiences on top of it. In the beginning, we were just like, okay, like this is kind of cool, but then we started to realize like, you know, this was what make blockchain games different, right? Blockchain games are open ecosystems where people could build and remix and compose, you know, bring a kitty into a different space and involve it, etc. And we called that the kittyverse, and that was amazing, and it was really our first try, and we had a grant, and we flew some of the developers in and spent time with them, and some of them we've hired and brought on board. So we learned a ton from this whole extensibility aspect of blockchain games. It helped us further our thinking about what blockchain games are in compared to normal games that exist, like mobile games or PC games. And with CheezeWizards, since the whole concept of CheezeWizard is a battle royale game on the blockchain, there's a lot of complicated um, functions and logic that is embedded in the smart contract. The coolest thing about CheezeWizards is that it has the ability for anyone around the world to organize a decentralized tournament by basically forking the contract and putting a new front end or a new back end, or putting its Chinese translation or Russian translations, and then having their own CheezeWizard tournament where people who own CheezeWizard NFTs can buy in and participate. And there's never been a game that has been thinking about tournaments in that aspect of let's just give the power to the people, right? And so that's why CheezeWizard is very interesting. And the whole premise of doing this hackathon with CoinList is to engage the broader developer community to build something that they could actually see and touch. There's a lot of protocol hackathons where it's like, hey, you know, build this on Cosmos, or build this on Polkadot, or build on Near, right? But there are people who also want to just build fun things that people can see and play with and has usability. So we've seen a lot of good reception on that, and we hope that more what I call blockchain native games will come up, and a lot more people will participate in the ecosystem.
Hmm.
Yeah. And in terms of geographies, do you see particular pockets of geographies like being the most early adopters in terms of gaming for CheezeWizards?
Yeah, so as with most of our network and games, it is US is quite dominant. Unfortunately for CheezeWizards, Canadians cannot play it because of you know, the regulations that are there. Even in the states, there are a few U.S. states that don't allow this, and it's all written in the details on the website. But yeah, I think US is the primary one. We have also a strong base in Europe. Um, One of the top players of CryptoKitties, his player name is Kitten Mittens. He's based in the Scandinavian area. And he's a hardcore like blockchain game player. So we do have a mix of European. And for CryptoKitties, just the game in general, we have a community in China and players in Japan and Korea. Although not as large as North America, there are still a lot of people who enjoy the game there.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask another question, which is we've been talking about all of these successes. I was wondering if you wanted to share any sort of war stories about a mistake that you made or something that you learned that you had to recover from, and what you learned from it. Of course, if you're willing, right?
So I learned a really important lesson when CryptoKitties was growing really fast in the beginning.
Mhm.
I was still new to the concept of consensus and mining, etc. And at one point, the network was so clogged, and I was like, "Oh, why don't we just talk to the miners? Like, just call them up, like pick up the phone and be like, hey, can you prioritize our transactions?" And so I talked to my friend. His name's Spencer, and he worked at F2 Pool, which is one of the largest mining pools. And I talked to him like, "Hey, is there any way that you could kind of like just mine the CryptoKitties transactions first or something, like just help it kind of decrease the load?" And he's like, "No, we can't really do that. It's just like, there's just a network. We cannot do anything about it." And I was like, "What do you mean, man? Like, isn't it like, Google Cloud Platform, like, or Amazon Web Services, like just increase it and bump it up?" And that was a lesson that we learned as a team. We're like, wow, we're dealing with something that's entirely different.
Mhm.
There was also another thing about CryptoKitties that we learned, which is when you breed the kitties or when you give birth to the kitties, there's a fee. That fee is meant to incentivize people to run birther or auto birthers. So it just like people having GPUs to mine crypto, people could have in the early days set up a GPU to give birth to kitties in a decentralized way. And at one point, the fee, we increased it so it had extra incentives for people around the world to help give birth to kitties, because these kitties were stuck in labor for many, many, many hours, very delayed. And at one point, the users started to tell us that, hey, the fee's so expensive, I don't even want to breed a kitty anymore. And so trying to balance that, we decreased it, and essentially all of the auto birthers shut down except our own. And essentially we left this on, giving birth to kitties as fast as we can in our office overnight. And we burned, I think, like a few tens of thousands of dollars overnight because we were paying out of pocket to give birth to all of the kitties around the world. And so one thing that we learned is like kind of when we build these mechanisms that is on the smart contract, and we want to have these kind of crypto economics work, especially with CheezeWizards, we think more carefully now of how to balance these things. Now, we can't expect everything. There's always going to be crazy edge cases, but we're more cautious now. And not only that, we always go through auditing, third-party auditing for our smart contracts. And if you guys are ever curious, we've already gotten some great feedback on the CheezeWizards smart contracts in how solid they are and how unique they are and compared to other ones that are out there. A lot of people, as you know, with CryptoKitties, they just cloned the CryptoKitties contract and then kind of added a little bit of extra things, and we love that. I think that's great. That's the point of being open source. And with the CheezeWizards, I think it will set a new standard in this new type of game, and people will definitely clone it and use it as an example. So that's kind of what we've learned through all this entire process.
Cool. And how do you think this open source thing of people forking it and cloning it? Do you think that's going to increase in the future? I mean, how do you think the industry will evolve around just crypto gaming? What are your predictions for the future of crypto gaming?
Yeah, so I think 2020 is going to be a big splash for and a big test for mainstream adoption. As far as I'm aware, NBA is going to be like the biggest hypothesis that we're going to test. Up until now, what we've done is, kind of build the community within the crypto industry and go to these conferences and, not only that, work with all the blockchain games around the world and have extensibility across these ecosystems. But what we've kind of realized now that we're entering into Q4 is that no matter how many cross-pollination, either from protocol levels or many protocols, or on the level of blockchain games, or even with dApps like 0x, etc., there's just not enough people in the pie no matter what at this point. And it's a hard reality, and we see the reality because we directly receive players who play the games, who spend the money, right? And so for us, we're going to try a different approach in 2020, where we go from above and work with an IP and distribute through the NBA network, and even go into the games and engage the audience and really learn what makes the mainstream audience tick around blockchain related collectibles. So that's going to be a big test for us. And right now, as I said, like blockchain native games, I think that there is kind of like a fork that's happening. It's not a bad thing. I think there's just two ways of potentially doing something. And the way that I think about blockchain native games is like, think about when the iPhone was created, right? A lot of people who are building Flash games on the web tried to kind of import it into the iPhone, or to convert it into a mobile game, but it just didn't really work, right? People who recognized that the iPhone had an accelerometer, it had touch screen, it had these camera features. Those were the companies that built Angry Birds or Supercell, who built Clash of Clans and Candy Crush, is because they realized that, hey, we should build a game around this device and maximize the potential of it. And those have become billions of dollar company, right? And so for us, when we're building blockchain native games, which will continue to do so in the future, is looking at the blockchain as it is and finding the reasons that are far beyond just NFTs, that have the game mechanic, the game logic on the blockchain and decentralized, and making that part of the experience, right? Now we see other companies who are just building normal games, and then somewhere in the menus and the settings, you could convert your items or heroes into an NFT, and that's pretty much it. For us, it's like, that's kind of like a game with a blockchain plugin. And it serves an interesting process. Like, I mean, it serves a purpose, and maybe these are the games that will get into the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Store and have distribution. But it's so little. It's like 10% blockchain. It doesn't even really affect anything, right? So I think that we're gonna continue to build blockchain native games where we see it as it is and we maximize the potential of it.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. And also, when you think about the NBA launch, do you think it will be a big test for like usability side of it, like onboarding flow and how to make blockchain invisible for people as mass market will join for the first time in a big way, or is it will be a more test of like scalability, or is it something entirely different?
Yeah, it's going to be both, to be honest. It's going to be like, we've already started, mapping, doing a lot of user testing with NBA fans. And we've, one of the insight that actually we had a meeting yesterday about it was that true ownership, or true whatever you want to call it, that is related, the words that we're used to the NBA fans, who some of them actually even own Bitcoin. They told us, like, I don't even know what the hell true ownership is. Or digital ownership. Like, what do you mean by that?
Right.
And I think part of us already know that, but it's like, it's something that you keep hearing, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we can not use true ownership or digital ownership on the website. People don't care about these things. And so we're learning a ton, and of course part of that is working with the Dapper team to even make the flow even better for the NBA fans. And then on top of that, like scalability on the R&D side, led by Dieter, kind of looking into how we could really scale this up. So yeah, that is definitely on our horizon.
Well, we're just about out of time, but I wanted to finish with a question I ask everybody, which is, do you have any advice for people who are starting blockchain companies now, or maybe they're creating a blockchain game, or they're just maybe playing with the idea of creating a blockchain project? What would your advice be for them, people just starting out?
Yeah, it's hard as shit. It's really difficult. Building a decentralized app, building smart contracts should not be taken lightly. Um, the analogy that I have is similar to sending a satellite into space, right? You're practically like SpaceX, right? So the chances of failure are really high, and just like how there's no people don't go up into space and grab faulty satellites down and bring it down to recycle. It just stays up there in the atmosphere. So whenever you build a decentralized app, if you have any intention of longevity of it, or the potential of not having millions or hundreds of millions of dollars being stolen, you have to kind of be very careful. And it's kind of counter to agile engineering development and everything that you've learned in Silicon Valley, right? Like build things, break things, etc., move fast. In this one aspect, it's all about perfection, and it's all about being very thorough and having a different mindset. Everything else, whether it's the front end or the back end, yeah, go crazy. But really spend time and the effort in making sure the smart contracts are solid. And if they are solid, that's how you're going to make your name, right? That's how you're going to really contribute to the space, because people need high quality code in order to fork or to clone, and use that as an example or a baseline for higher quality projects. So it's all kind of interconnected, and keep at it. And our doors is always open to help developers around the world if they have any questions. And a lot of this is just like you guys, it's all new, right? And we're all just exploring, and there's so much to learn and so much to share.
Cool. Well, thanks very much, Benny. This has been really interesting.
Well, Thank you so much, Peter and Sasha. Really appreciated the chat today, and yeah, let's keep in touch.
Cool. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Take care.